What happens when one of country music's biggest legends sits down for what should be a routine morning interview, only for it to quickly spiral into one of the most uncomfortable moments in live television history? This is the story of how a simple question turned into a full-blown confrontation, ending with Reba McEntire walking off the Today Show set, leaving millions of viewers stunned and the host scrambling to fill dead air. Before we dive into the details, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments what you think really happened here, because this one is bound to leave you with a lot of questions. The interview started off normally enough. Reba McEntire walked onto the set with her trademark smile, waving to the audience before taking her seat across from the hosts. The atmosphere was warm, just like the kind of cozy vibe the morning show is known for. For the first few minutes, the conversation was smooth questions about her latest tour, her upcoming album, and some lighthearted banter about life on the road. The lead host leaned forward with a friendly grin. "So Reba, your fans are absolutely loving the new tour. You've been performing for decades now. How do you keep that same energy night after night?" Reba smiled, clearly in her element. "Well, it's about the connection with the fans. Every night is different because every crowd is different. I feed off their energy, and they feed off mine. It keeps me young." The co-host chimed in. "Speaking of staying young, you look absolutely incredible. What's your secret?" Reba laughed. "Oh, I appreciate that. I think it's just about taking care of yourself, staying active, and loving what you do. When you love your work, it shows." Everything seemed perfectly pleasant, the kind of interview that would wrap up with some promotional plugs and maybe a performance. But then, the tone shifted. The lead host glanced down at their notes. When they looked back up, there was something different in their expressions, something more pointed. "Reba, I want to shift gears a little bit here, if we can. You've been very vocal over the years about certain personal beliefs, especially when it comes to family values and traditional ideals, but we've noticed you've been quieter lately on some of the bigger social issues that a lot of celebrities are speaking out on. Is there a reason for that?" The studio seemed to get quieter. Reba's smile remained, but it tightened just slightly at the edges. "Well, I've always believed that my music speaks for itself. I'm here to entertain people, to bring them joy. I don't think every conversation needs to turn into something heavy." The co-host jumped in, their tone casual but probing. "But don't you think that, with your platform, you have a responsibility to speak up? A lot of your fans look up to you. They want to know where you stand on things that matter." Reba shifted in her seat, her hands folding neatly in her lap. "I think where I stand is pretty clear. If people pay attention to my work and how I live my life, I don't feel the need to broadcast my opinions on every single issue just because someone expects me to." The lead host pressed on. "But isn't silence a choice, too? Some would argue that staying quiet on certain issues is the same as taking a side." There was a pause, just long enough to feel uncomfortable. Reba's expression didn't change much, but her eyes sharpened. "I think that's a pretty unfair way to frame it. I'm not staying quiet because I don't care. I'm choosing not to turn every interview into a political debate. There's a difference." The co-host leaned forward, their voice taking on a more personal tone. "We're not trying to make this political, Reba. We're just curious. For example, there have been conversations recently about inclusivity in country music, about making the industry more welcoming to people from all backgrounds. You've been a trailblazer for women in country music. Where do you stand on making sure the genre is inclusive for everyone?" Reba nodded slowly, her jaw tightening just a fraction. "I think country music has always been about storytelling, about real life and real emotions. It's a genre that connects with people because it's honest. I've always supported anyone who wants to make great music, regardless of who they are or where they come from." The lead host wasn't letting it go. "That's great to hear, But there are some who feel like the industry, and maybe even some of its biggest stars, could be doing more. Do you think you could be doing more? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Reba's smile faded completely now, replaced by a calm but firm expression. I think I've spent my entire career breaking down barriers and paving the way for others. I've worked harder than most people can imagine to get where I am, and I've done it with integrity. So, no, I don't think I need to justify what I am or am not doing to anyone. The co-host tried to soften things. We're not asking you to justify anything. Reba, we're just having a conversation, the host said. Attempting to calm the growing tension, Reba's eyes flicked between the two hosts. Is that what this is? Because it feels a lot more like I'm being put on trial here. The lead host let out a nervous laugh. Not at all. We just think it's important to have these discussions. Reba didn't laugh. Then maybe you should have told me that this is what the interview was going to be about before I sat down. I came here to talk about my music, not to be interrogated. About my personal beliefs, the tension in the studio was thick now, the kind that practically leaped off the screen. The hosts exchanged a quick glance, clearly not expecting this level of pushback. The lead host tried to recover. Reba, we respect your career and everything you've accomplished. But you have to understand, people are paying attention to these things now more than ever. Reba's voice stayed steady, but there was an edge to it now. I understand that perfectly well. What I don't understand is why you feel the need to ambush me on live television instead of just asking me about my work, like we agreed on. The co-host interjected, trying to smooth things over. We didn't mean for this to feel like an ambush. Reba cut them off, her tone sharp but controlled. Well, that's exactly what it feels like. The studio audience fell silent, the discomfort palpable. The hosts were clearly scrambling, trying to figure out how to steer the conversation back to safer ground. But the damage was already done. The lead host tried again. Look, Reba, we're all on the same side here. We just want to have an open and honest conversation. Reba looked directly at the host, her expression unreadable. If you wanted an open and honest conversation, you would have been open and honest with me about what this interview was really going to be. Instead, you blindsided me, and now you're acting surprised that I'm not playing along. The silence that followed was deafening. The lead host finally broke it, their voice noticeably less confident than before. Reba, I think maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Let me try to rephrase this. Reba held up a hand, stopping them mid-sentence. No, I don't think rephrasing is going to fix this. You knew exactly what you were doing when you asked those questions. You wanted to create a moment, and congratulations, you got one. The co-host shifted uncomfortably, trying to inject some levity. We really weren't trying to create anything, Reba. We just thought it would be interesting to get your perspective. On some of these topics, Reba's laugh was dry, almost bitter. Interesting for who? For your viewers? For your ratings? Because it certainly wasn't interesting for me to be put in this position. The lead host tried to regain control. You're absolutely right that we should have been clearer about the direction of the conversation. But now that we're here, can we at least talk about it? You have such a unique perspective as someone who's been in this industry for so long. Reba shook her head slowly. You're still doing it. You're still trying to push me into a corner. I'm not going to sit here and give you sound bites that you can twist into whatever narrative you want to sell. The co-host leaned in, their voice now more pleading. That's not what we're trying to do at all. We genuinely respect you, Reba. We respect your career, your talent, everything you've accomplished. Reba's eyes narrowed slightly. If you respected me, you wouldn't have ambushed me like this. Respect means being upfront about your intentions. Respect means having a conversation, not setting a trap. The lead host was visibly flustered now, trying to find a way to salvage the interview. I want to be clear, Reba. We did not set any kind of trap. These are questions that a lot of people have. Questions that your fans have. Reba's voice rose just slightly, still controlled, but with more force behind it. My fans come to my shows. They buy my albums, they've followed me for decades, and you know what they don't do? They don't ambush me with loaded questions disguised as casual conversation. The audience was completely silent now, watching this unfold in real time. The camera operators didn't know where to point their cameras, and you could see the panic starting to set in on the hosts' faces. The co-host tried again, their voice softer. Reba, can we just take a breath here and reset? We clearly started this conversation in the wrong way. Reba looked at them for a long moment before responding. You know what the problem is? The problem is that you think I need to answer to you. You think that because I'm sitting in this chair, I owe you explanations about my personal beliefs, my values, my opinions on every hot-button issue you can think of, and I do not. The lead host jumped in quickly. We don't think you owe us anything, Reba. But you have to understand, when you're in the public eye, people are going to have questions. Reba's response was immediate and sharp. People can have all the questions they want. That doesn't mean I have to answer them, especially not when they're framed the way you're framing them. The co-host tried to de-escalate. You prefer we frame them. Reba let out a long breath, clearly trying to maintain her composure. I would prefer you didn't frame them at all. I came here to talk about my music, my tour, the things I'm actually here to promote. I didn't come here to be your punching bag for social commentary. The lead host looked genuinely confused now. Punching bag. Reba, we're just having a conversation. Reba's voice was like ice. No, you're grilling me. There's a difference. A conversation goes both ways. This has been entirely one-sided with you throwing questions at me that you know are designed to make me look bad no matter how I answer. The co-host shook their head. That's not true at all. We're not trying to make you look bad. Reba leaned forward slightly. Then what are you trying to do? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you brought me on here under false pretenses. So you could score points by putting me in an uncomfortable position on live television. The silence that followed was excruciating. The lead host opened their mouth to respond, then closed it again. The co-host stared down at their notes, clearly unsure of what to say next. Finally, the lead host spoke, their voice quieter now. Reba, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. We genuinely wanted to have a meaningful conversation with you. Reba's expression didn't soften. A meaningful conversation requires honesty. It requires transparency, and it requires both parties to be on the same page about what they're discussing. None of those things happened here today. The co-host tried one more time. Can we start over? Can we talk about your new album, your tour, the things you came here to talk about? Reba looked at them both, then glanced over at the camera, then back at the hosts. For a moment, it seemed like she might agree, like she might let them reset and move forward. But then she shook her head. You know what? No, I don't think we can just move past this and pretend it didn't happen because it did happen, and it tells me everything I need to know about what this interview really was. The lead host's voice took on a note of desperation. Reba, please, we are live. We have millions of people watching. Can we please just continue the interview? Reba's response was calm but firm. That's exactly the problem. You care more about the millions of people watching than you do about treating your guest with basic respect and courtesy. The co-host looked genuinely distressed. Now, we do respect you, Reba. We always have. Reba stood up, and you could feel the shock ripple through the studio. If you respected me, this conversation would have gone very differently. The lead host stood up too, reaching out as if to stop her. Reba, wait. please let us talk about this." Reba looked at them with an expression that was equal parts disappointment and resolve. "We just spent the last 10 minutes talking about it. I think I've made myself clear." The co-host was on their feet now too. "Reba, please don't leave. We can fix this." Reba shook her head. "No, you cannot, because the damage is already done. You showed me exactly who you are and what you think of me, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that didn't happen." The lead host was clearly panicking now. "Reba, we are begging you. Please stay. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. Your album, your tour, anything." Reba's voice was steady, but there was a finality to it. "I appreciate the offer, but I think I'm done here. I came on this show in good faith, and that good faith was not returned, so I am going to excuse myself." The co-host's voice was almost pleading. "Reba, think about the fans watching. Think about the people who tuned in to see you." Reba turned back to face them, her expression softening just slightly. "I am thinking about them, and I am thinking about what kind of example I want to set. I'm not going to sit here and let myself be disrespected just because it's live television. My fans will understand that." The lead host tried one last time. "Is there anything we can say to change your mind?" Reba looked at them for a long moment, then shook her head. "No, there is not." And with that, she began removing her microphone, carefully unclipping it from her clothing and setting it down on the chair. The host stood there, frozen, unsure of what to do. The camera crew didn't know whether to keep filming or cut away. The entire studio was in a state of suspended animation, watching one of the biggest stars in country music prepare to walk off the set in the middle of a live broadcast. The lead host made one final attempt. "Reba, please. We're sorry if we offended you. That was never our intention." Reba paused, her hand on the microphone pack at her waist. She looked at the host with an expression that was hard to read. "I believe that it wasn't your intention to offend me, but it was your intention to put me in a difficult position, and you succeeded. So now, I am making a choice about how I respond to that." The co-host's voice cracked slightly. "And your choice is to walk off." Reba nodded slowly. "My choice is to remove myself from a situation that has become untenable. That is my right, and I am exercising it." The lead host stood there, mouth slightly open, clearly trying to formulate words that might salvage the situation. "Reba, we understand you are upset. We understand we handled this poorly, but walking off, is that really the answer?" Reba finished removing her microphone pack and set it gently on the table beside her chair. "Walking off is not the answer I wanted, but it is the answer I have been left with. You put me in an impossible position, and now you are asking me to stay in it. That is not fair, and I am not going to do it." The co-host stepped closer, their hands out in a gesture of supplication. "What can we do right now in this moment to make this right?" Reba looked at them both, her expression tired but resolute. "You cannot make it right. Not now. Maybe you could have an hour ago before this interview started by being honest with me about what you really wanted to discuss. Maybe you could have made it right 10 minutes ago by backing off when it became clear I was uncomfortable. But now the only thing I can do is leave with my dignity intact." The lead host's voice took on a desperate edge. "But your dignity has never been in question. Reba, you are one of the most respected artists in the world." Reba's laugh was short and humorless. "Then why did you treat me like I was not? Why did you treat me like someone you needed to corner and interrogate instead of someone you respect?" The co-host interjected quickly. "We didn't mean for it to feel like an interrogation." Reba turned to face them directly, but it did. And intentions do not erase impact. You can stand there and tell me all day long that you didn't mean for it to feel that way, but that doesn't change the fact that it did feel that way. And I get to decide how I respond to that. The lead host ran a hand through their hair, clearly stressed. Reba, we have cameras rolling. We have a show to finish. Can we please just sit back down and talk about your music? I promise. No more difficult questions. Just your album, your tour, the things you want to talk about. Reba shook her head slowly. You're still missing the point. It's not about difficult questions. I've answered difficult questions my entire career. It's about respect.